The lion. The lion, the king. Behold the king. The first of those 4 kings whom God disclosed to the dazzled eyes of Ezekiel on the banks of the Chebar, and whom St. John recognized in his resplendent vision on Patmos, when they sang before the throne of the sovereign Lamb, beating their fiery wings. The lion, awesome king of the beasts, the ox, king of sacrificial victims, the eagle, king of the air, and man, king of the world. Yet this lion of the prophets of Israel, sovereign though he was only a servant. That is why, together with the man, the eagle and the ox, he stood transfixed with love and adoration, acclaiming the one who occupied the throne, by turns lion and lamb, the one whom John saw ascend to the divine seat thereto, open the book sealed with 7 seals. But many centuries before, the time that John rested his head on his master's heart, and felt the Spirit descend upon him, the pre-Christian traditions of Europe, Africa, and Asia surrounding Israel and its religion had adopted the image of the lion to represent what they believed to be the various attributes of divinity. Among the Egyptians, the goddess Sekhmet proudly bore a lion's head among the Ammonites. The sun was adored under the name of Kamos, the lion sun, and in Syria, as we shall see later on, the royal animal had also a divine character. For millennia, Tibet has worshipped the Kagroma, goddesses with the heads of lionesses, like Sekhmet of Egypt, divinely beautiful, who dance naked upon the corpses of conquered men and animals. Among the Greeks, 4 harnessed lions drew the chariot of Cybele, at a stirring gallop or pacing majestically. Cybele, mother of the gods, the good goddess, image of the divine bounty which gives. Humanity, all the good things which come forth from the earth. In Persia, the lion was one of the animals sacred to the cult of Mithra. The feasts of this god were called the Leontic rites, and often on the sculptures which depict Mithra, sacrificing the bull, the lion and the serpent are shown lying underneath the slain animal. In the Mithric mysteries, initiates of the 4th order were called lions and lionesses. And Mithra himself, the invincible sun, seems to have been sometimes personified by a lion-headed god. Even today, the heraldic sword-wielding lion of the Persian state bears on his back the resplendent sun. In ancient Syria, the god of courage was represented by a crowned lion centaur, endowed with 4 lion's paws and 2 human arms. The lion also lends his claws to the Sphinx and his body to the griffin, giving them a part of his nature and of the qualities which are attributed to him: royalty, power, watchfulness, courage and justice, royalty and power. No doubt this was why Alexander the Great, and after him Maximilian Hercules, Probus Gallienus and other rulers, appeared on their coins hooded with the skin of a lion's head. Strength and courage. Over and above the Mithraic influence, this accounts for the lion's adoption as insignia by the legions of Rome. Watchfulness. The age-old belief, sanctioned as well by classical Latin authorities, which shows the lion sleeping in the desert with his eyes wide open, day or night, must surely have seemed significant to the first Christian symbolists. What did it matter to them whether the alleged facts were true or not? St. Augustine, in commenting on a rather strange characteristic attributed to the eagle, tells us that in symbolism, the important thing is to consider the significance of a fact, and not to dispute its authenticity. Thus, Christian idealism of bygone days always and in everything paid heed to the symbol, and not to the thing, to the spirit which gives life, and not to the letter which sucks dry. So it sees in the perpetually open-eyed lion the image of the attentive Christ who sees everything and who guards souls from evil when they truly wish, like a watchful pastor, a good shepherd. Here, the Far East is in agreement with the Western and Christian Middle Ages in seeing the lion as a vigilant guardian. Since what long-vanished epoch have granite lions, crouched and ferocious like those of Angkor Wat, stood guard in the company of fearsome dragons at the threshold of India's temples? For the symbolists of Asia, as for those of the West, lions and dragons never shut their eyes. They would say with our Brunetto Latini, all lions of every kind keep their eyes open even while they sleep. William of Normandy, who wrote his Divine Bestiary at the beginning of the 13th century, also underlines the symbolic character of the watchful lion, and gives the following interpretation: Car quand il dort, l'œil veille. When the lion sleeps, his eye watches en dormant les yeux ouverts. In sleep his eyes are open, et clair et luisants et aper, clear and gleaming and awake. Now, he adds, we must understand what this means. Quand cet lion fut en croix, mis, when this lion was put on the cross par les lèvres, ses ennemis, by the Jews, his enemy, qui le jugèrent à grand tort, who judged him so wrongfully, l'humanité y souffrit mort. His humanity suffered death then, quand l'esprit de corps rendit, when he rendered the spirit from the body, en la sainte croix s'endormit. Si que la dette éveilla, and fell asleep on the holy cross, but the divine nature kept watch. And here the ancient poet is in accord with Saint Hilary and Saint Augustine, who see in the lion's way of sleeping an allusion to Christ's divine nature, which was not extinguished in the sepulchre, even while his humanity underwent a real death justice. For the ancients used to say that the lion will attack his prey only if he is compelled by an urgent need for food, and that, even then, he will never pounce upon a foe who has fallen before the battle can begin. It was also said that the lion knew how to show appreciation for a favor, to the point where he might teach humans some useful lessons in gratitude. The Middle Ages maintained the connections which had previously linked the lion to the idea of justice. From Italy up to the Loire, ecclesiastical courts were often held in the forecourts of churches between stone lions which framed the portal, and judgments were handed down there in accordance with the well-known expression inter leones et coram populo, between the lions and before the assembled people. One can still see one of these forecourts of justice, flanked by weather-beaten lions, at the grand portal of the church of St. Radegunde in Poitiers, and lions appear again at the threshold of several ancient churches in Rome, at St. Lawrence outside the walls, at the Church of the 12 Apostles, at St. Lawrence in Lucina, and at St. Saba. The concept which links the lion to the virtue of justice is supported in Christian symbolism by the Bible's description of Solomon's throne of justice, made of ivory and gold, which rested on 6 steps guarded by 12 magnificent lions. The lion was also an emblem of the resurrection. Émile Malle explains a stained glass window in the Cathedral of Bourges, which shows a symbolic lion near the tomb of the risen Christ, by recalling the tradition which made the lion in Christian art an emblem of Christ as the risen God-man. Mayle writes, in the Middle Ages, everyone subscribed to the idea that the lioness brought forth young which appeared to be stillborn. For 3 days, the lion cubs would give no sign of life, but on the 3rd day, the lion would return and animate them with his breath. The authors of the bestiaries of the Middle Ages certainly found this legend in Aristotle and in Pliny the Elder, yet Plutarch, better informed about the Orient and its creatures, had written that, on the contrary, lion cubs come into the world with their eyes wide open, and for that reason certain peoples of his time consecrated the lion to the sun. This would also explain the lion's presence alongside Mithra, the Sol Invictus. Although Cuvier and the modern naturalists confirm Plutarch's opinion, the authors and artists of the Middle Ages, relying on the scant authority of Origen and of the Physiologus, followed the opposite view. In such a thoroughly idealistic world, which sought to consecrate every truth by means of symbols, the fable of the lion cubs born dead and brought to life on the third day by their father enjoyed a great vogue. It was favoured by St. Epiphanius, St. Anselm, St. Ivo of Chartres, St. Bruno of Asti, and many others. As Mayle puts it, the apparent death of the little lion represented the sojourn of Jesus Christ in the grave, and his birth was like an image of the resurrection. William of Normandy, in his Divine Bestiary, might be translated as follows: Quand la femelle fut née, when the lioness gives birth, le faon chiait à terre mort, her cub drops to earth, dead. De vivre n'aura y a confort, who lacks the force of life, jusque l'y perd au tiers hier, until the father, on the third day, le souffle et lèche par amour, breathes on him and licks him, for love en telle manière le respire. In this way, he breathes life into. Him ne pourrait avoir autre mire. No other remedy could save him. Autre si fut de Jésus Christ. So was it with Jesus Christ. L'humanité que pour nos Christ, the humanity which he assumed que pour l'amour de nos vestis, and cloaked himself in for love. Of us pain et travail pour nos sentis, suffered pain and labour for us. Sa déité ne sentit rien, of which his divinity felt nothing. Ici crise, y ferait bien. Believe thus, and you will do well. Quand Deix fut mis el monument, when God was put into the tomb, tres jours y fut tant solement. He stayed only 3 days, et au tiers il le respira, and on the third day again received his breath. Li pere qui le suscita, from the Father who roused him. Autresi comme li lion, just as the lion breathes life, respire son petit faon, into his little cub. And the custom which prevailed before Christianity in Lycia and in Phrygia, as in several other regions, of placing the image of the lion on the tombs of kings or illustrious heroes, might have its source, in part, in the fabled power of resurrection which the ancients attributed to the lion. In the art of antiquity, his image often accompanies the palm tree, which throughout the ancient world was an emblem of resurrection still more than of the desert. The union in Jesus Christ of two natures, human and divine, has been the theme of many allegorical images, including that of the lion. And it is certainly in the lion that the two are the least visibly differentiated. The ancients were in agreement that all the lion's active qualities were located in his foreparts. In his head, neck, chest, and front claws. For them, the hind quarters served only as the animal's physical support. Thus, they made the forequarters of the lion the emblem of Christ's divine nature, and the hind quarters the image of his humanity. Was it not perhaps because of this idea that the heraldic lion called the lion rampant was represented lifting himself on his hind legs, with his foreparts turned to the sky? It is also quite natural that mystical writers saw an image of the potent speech of the Christ in the roar of the lion. The formidable voice, which resounds through the immense expanses of the desert, served as an image for that of the teacher of the word. And its unequaled range, Hosea prophesied of this matchless voice. They shall walk after the Lord, he shall roar like a lion. When he shall roar, then the children shall tremble from the west. And Joel, in turn, the Lord also shall roar out of Zion. Later on, the Latin liturgy would make use of the same terms in speaking of the Saviour. De Sion rugiet, et de Jerusalem dabit vocem suam. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem. Perhaps this is why, in our western regions at least, preaching pulpits often are supported by lions. In Chassagne, near Loudun, Vienne, and in the same city, at the church of Martrey, the pulpits, dating from the 15th and 16th centuries, are made in the form of stone fonts and rest their base on seated lions. But the lion shares with numerous animals, which are also authentic emblems of Jesus Christ, the negative role of serving equally as an allegorical image for the Antichrist, for Satan. Since the dawn of the Church, the lion has had this evil significance quite often, on account of St. Peter's words, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." Frequently, in scenes of ancient Christian art, where the lion pursues timid doves or innocent gazelles, the onlooker sees only the ordinary pursuit of prey by a famished beast, while in reality, these images illustrate the text from St. Peter. Commentators on the sacred books explicitly recognize the image of the devil in the lion vanquished by young David. The celebrated reliquary of Abbé Bégon, part of the treasure of the ancient 9th century abbey of Conques-en-Rouergue, which was known as St. Vincent's Lantern, portrayed David's combat with the lion. And on the damaged inscription beneath this image, one can still read, "Sic noster, David Satanum superavit. Thus our David overcame Satan." In his infernal role, the lion is often the emblem of one of the three concupiscences to which Christian asceticism attributed the downfall of souls: concupiscence of the flesh, whence come lust, gluttony, and sloth; concupiscence of the eyes, whence lust again, greed and envy; concupiscence of pride of life, whence pride and wrath. In these three filiations of the 7 deadly sins, the lion represents pride of life,